Number 1. Bragg Road. Bragg Road began as a working line, not a ghost story. In the early 1900s, the Gulf, Colorado, and Santa Fe Railway cut a straight path through the Big Thicket near Saratoga, Texas. Trains carried timber, cattle, oil, and people through the pines. When the rails were pulled up in 1934, the old track bed became a sandy road, quiet and closed in by trees. At night, that straight road can feel longer than 8 miles. The branches lean over the path like a tunnel, and the dark woods swallow sound. Then, according to local stories, a small light appears far ahead. It may glow blue, green, yellow, or white. It bobs gently, as if someone is walking with a lantern, but never getting closer. Many people have tried to explain the Saratoga light. Some say it is swamp gas, some say headlights from a distant highway, and others blame heat, mist, and tired eyes. But the oldest favorite tale is warmer than scary. A railroad man still walking the route, swinging his lantern while searching for the tracks that disappeared. The history is real, the forest is real, and the light has been talked about for generations. Maybe it is only a trick of distance and trees, or maybe, on that old railroad bed, one last worker is still making sure every traveler gets safely through the dark. Number 2. U.S. Route 50. U.S. Route 50 crosses Nevada like a thin line drawn across open silence. It runs through central valleys, over mountain passes, and past towns that once served miners, stagecoaches, and long-distance riders. This road follows pieces of older American travel, including Pony Express country and the later Lincoln Highway, where movement west once felt like courage. In July 1986, Life magazine helped make it famous by calling it the loneliest road in America. The name was meant as a warning because the spaces were so empty and help could feel very far away. Suddenly, the lonely road became a badge of honor for travelers who wanted the Old West without crowds. The road passes places like Fallon, Austin, Eureka, Ely, and Baker. But between them, the land opens wide. Sagebrush rolls to the horizon. Old mining hills stand like broken walls. At night, the sky seems too big for the earth below it, and headlights look small against miles of black desert and cold stars. Even a far ranch light feels like company. The haunting feeling here does not come from one ghost. It comes from distance, history, and the thought of every rider, miner, driver, and dreamer who crossed before. Route 50 makes a person feel tiny in the best and strangest way. By the time the road disappears behind you, the silence feels less empty and more like a voice that never needed words. Number 3. Route 9, Sleepy Hollow. Route 9 runs beside the Hudson River and through Sleepy Hollow, a village that turned an old American tale into a living landscape. In 1820, Washington Irving gave the world the legend of Sleepy Hollow, with Ichabod Crane, dark lanes, and the terrible rider people remember as the Headless Horseman. The road still carries that autumn feeling. But Sleepy Hollow was more than a storybook name. During the Revolutionary War, Westchester County sat near dangerous neutral ground, where raiders, soldiers, and frightened families crossed paths. Irving borrowed from local places, old churchyards, Dutch farm life, and European ghost tales, then planted them in the Hudson Valley. That is why the legend feels rooted. On misty nights, drivers on Route 9 pass the old Dutch church, shadowed trees, and cemetery gates, where history feels close enough to touch. People say they hear hoofbeats in the woods, or imagine a horse rushing just beyond the headlights. Most know it is folklore, yet the sound of tires on wet pavement can become a gallop in the mind. That is the quiet power of Route 9. It does not need to prove a ghost is riding there. The road itself remembers enough: war, old farms, buried names, and one story that never stopped moving. When fog slips over the Hudson and the trees go black, it is easy to understand why Sleepy Hollow still feels watched from the saddle. The village seems to listen closely. Number 4. Dalton Highway. The Dalton Highway was built for work, not comfort. In 1974, crews pushed it north through Alaska as a supply road for the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and the Prudhoe Bay oil fields. Today it stretches about 414 miles from near Livengood to Deadhorse, moving from boreal forest to tundra and toward the edge of the Arctic Ocean. This is one of America's loneliest drives because nature is always in charge. The road crosses the Yukon River, climbs toward the Brooks Range, and reaches Adigun Pass, where weather can change fast. North of Coldfoot, services almost vanish for hundreds of miles, leaving drivers with gravel, wind, trucks, and a horizon that feels endless. The haunting part of the Dalton is not a single legend. It is the feeling that the land is older and stronger than anything humans have built. Pipeline posts run beside the road like markers. Heavy trucks throw dust in summer and ice in winter. At night, the northern lights can glow above the tundra like green fire in a silent sky. No town light softens the view. The cold makes every little sound sharper. Every mile reminds travelers to be humble. A flat tire, a storm, or one wrong turn can become serious very quickly. Yet the road is beautiful because it is so honest. The Dalton does not pretend to be easy. It carries workers, supplies, and brave travelers through a place where the modern world thins out. Number 5. Crawford Road. Crawford Road winds through the wooded edge of York County, close to land shaped by some of America's oldest conflicts. Yorktown is remembered for 1781, when George Washington's army helped trap Lord Cornwallis and change the course of the Revolutionary War. Later, Civil War movement added more heavy history to the same region. The road itself is narrow, shaded, and lonely, with a bridge and quiet bends that have fed local stories for decades. Drivers often talk about the air changing beneath the overpass, as if sound drops away for a moment. Some legends speak of pale figures near the trees, while others describe a lonely bride or soldiers still standing watch. The facts and folklore do not always line up neatly, and that is part of the road's pull. Local reports, old crimes, battlefield memory, and teenage dares have all been folded into one dark reputation. In daylight, Crawford Road can look like any wooded Virginia lane. At dusk, the same trees seem to lean closer to the pavement. The quiet feels almost planned. What makes Crawford Road memorable is the mix of real history and whispered mystery. The battles ended long ago, but the land still feels crowded with what happened nearby. Maybe the figures are only shadows from branches and headlights. Still, when a car passes under the bridge and the woods fall silent, it is easy to feel that someone is keeping watch. Number 6. Main State Route 201. Main State Route 201, known on its northern stretch as the Old Canada Road, follows the Kennebec River into some of the quietest country in New England. Long before cars, this corridor was used for travel, trade, logging, and movement between Maine and Quebec. Even today, the road feels more like a river path than a highway. Its hardest chapter came in 1775, when Benedict Arnold led hundreds of men north through this wilderness during the American Revolution. They were trying to reach Quebec and help take the city from British control. The march was brutal. Cold rain, hunger, broken boats, and rough portages wore the soldiers down before they ever reached Canada. That history gives the road a lonely wait. Drivers pass dark spruce forests, steep riverbanks, old mill towns, and sudden openings where moose step close to the shoulder. In autumn, the hills burn red and gold, but the beauty can feel almost too quiet. The farther north you go, the more the modern world seems to fall behind. There is no famous ghost waiting at one bridge here. The haunting is older and softer. It is the thought of exhausted men dragging boats through mud, families moving for work, and loggers watching the river carry their lives away. At dusk, when fog rises from the Kennebec, Route 201 feels like a road that remembers every footstep before the engine and every silence after it. Number 7. Interstate 4, Dead Zone. Near Sanford, Florida, Interstate 4 crosses the St. Johns River like any busy modern highway, but a short stretch near the bridge has carried a strange name for years: the Dead Zone. Cars rush over it every day, yet the story beneath the pavement reaches back to the 1880s, when the area was still mostly woods, water, heat, and settlement dreams. Local legend connects the place to St. Joseph's Colony, a small Catholic community tied to immigrant families. In 1887, yellow fever struck hard, and several people were buried in the woods after the outbreak. Later, when Interstate 4 was built through central Florida, the tale says the graves were covered or disturbed by the new road. After that, the reports began to grow. Some drivers spoke of sudden radio static, stalled electronics, strange balls of light, and accidents that seemed to gather in the same quarter mile. Skeptics point to heavy traffic, weather, and the danger of a busy interstate. But folklore has a way of staying alive when a road is built over a sad memory. It is fast, loud, and full of headlights. Yet the legend asks travelers to think about what was there first. Beneath the roar of engines is an older Florida of fever, loss, and forgotten graves. For a few seconds over the river, the highway does not feel finished, only Number 8. U.S. Route 50. U.S. Route 50 in Utah feels like Nevada's quieter shadow. It enters from the west near the Great Basin and moves through wide desert country, small towns, and empty spaces where the sky seems larger than the road. In places, the highway shares the feeling of older Western travel, where riders, settlers, and freight wagons once crossed dry ground with little help nearby. The West Desert keeps part of the old Pony Express story close. From 1860 to 1861, young riders carried urgent mail across the interior West before the telegraph changed everything. Their route did not last long, but the idea of a lone rider pushing through wind, dust, and distance still fits this country. The land makes every mile feel earned. Farther east, the road reaches stronger color and sharper stone. Around central Utah, the route connects toward the San Rafael Swell and Green River country, where cliffs, reefs, and broken canyons rise out of the desert. The scenery is grand, but it can also feel empty in a way that makes a driver lower their voice without knowing why. The haunting here is not a ghost chasing cars, it is the old fear of distance. A flat tire, a low fuel tank, or a darkening sky can remind you how huge Utah really is. Route 50 turns history into silence. Mail riders, desert trails, mining roads, and red stone watching from far away. Number 9. Clinton Road. Clinton Road in West Milford, New Jersey, is only about 10 miles long, but it has carried more stories than many highways twice its size. It runs through thick woods, near reservoir land, and old iron country, with few houses along the way. Even in daylight, the road feels sealed off from the towns around it, as if the forest closed the door. Local history gives the place a rough edge. The area's old settlement of Clinton gave the road its name, and nearby ironworks once belonged to a harder working landscape of furnaces, forests, and water power. Later, the lonely road gathered stranger fame through local magazines, late-night drives, and stories passed from one nervous visitor to another. The most famous tale belongs to the Ghost Boy near Dead Man's Curve. People say that if a coin is tossed into the water by the bridge, it may return to the road as if a hidden hand placed it there. Other drivers talk about phantom headlights appearing behind them, following too close, and then vanishing before the end of the road. What makes Clinton Road last is the way ordinary places become folklore when they are quiet enough. A bend becomes a warning. A bridge becomes a test. A pair of headlights becomes a story told for years. Maybe the road is only dark, empty, and full of imagination. But at night, with the trees tight on both sides, it feels like New Jersey is holding its breath. Number 10. Superstition Mountains Apache Trail. The Apache Trail, now Arizona State, Route 88, winds through the Superstition Mountains and Tonto National Forest east of Phoenix. Long before tourists came for the views, older native paths crossed this desert country. In the early 1900s, the road was built as a supply route for Roosevelt Dam, one of the great water projects of the Southwest. The road still feels carved from rock and heat. It twists past cliff walls, desert slopes, cactus, and blue water held behind dams. Theodore Roosevelt Dam was completed in 1911, and the road that served it carried workers, wagons, supplies, and later curious drivers into a landscape that could look beautiful and dangerous at the same time. Folklore adds another layer. The Superstition Mountains are tied to the famous Lost Dutchman mine, a treasure legend built from mining dreams, missing prospectors, and stories of gold hidden in rough country. Travelers sometimes say the heat makes shapes move on the ridges, like old miners or pioneers walking where no trail should be. Its history is stone, water, labor, and rumor. One curve shows bright desert, the next drops into shadow. At sunset, the mountains turn red, and the old gold stories feel almost close enough to follow. But the road seems to warn every traveler. Some secrets are meant to stay in the hills. Number 11. Route 2A, Haynesville. Haynesville, Maine, is not famous because it is pretty, though the woods can be beautiful. It is famous because truckers once feared it. In Aroostook County, this road cut through lonely timber country with sharp turns, steep grades, winter ice, and long nights. Before bigger highways changed the flow of traffic, heavy potato trucks used it on the run south toward markets. In 1965, Maine singer Dick Curlis helped make the danger known across the country with "A Tombstone Every Mile." The song did not invent the fear. It came from a real reputation built by crashes, snow, fog, and hard work behind the wheel. Drivers knew the Haynesville woods could turn cruel fast, especially when a load was heavy and the road was slick. Then folklore stepped in where history left room. Travelers began telling of a young woman walking alone in the snow, sometimes near the shoulder, sometimes appearing in the headlights. In the gentlest version, she is a lost hitchhiker who accepts help and sits quietly in the car. But before town lights appear, she fades from the seat, leaving only cold air. It remembers real drivers, real fear, and long miles through dark Maine woods. Maybe the girl is only fog, snow, and a tired mind on a dangerous road. Number 12. Oregon Route 31. Oregon Route 31 begins near Lapine and heads into a different Oregon than many travelers expect. The forest thins, the towns spread out, and the land opens into high desert. This is the Oregon Outback Scenic Byway, a road of sagebrush, juniper, dry lake beds, and wide skies. It feels less like a shortcut and more like a slow crossing into older time. The route carries pieces of exploration history. In 1843, John C. Fremont's expedition moved through this region while mapping parts of the American West. Near Summer Lake, the byway still remembers that journey. Long before highways, native peoples knew the lakes, springs, animals, and seasonal paths of this dry country. The road only made the old distance easier to see. Drivers pass Fort Rock, Big Hole, Hole in the Ground, Summer Lake, and the long, pale edge of Abbott Lake. Some places look almost lunar, as if the earth opened and then went quiet. Birds gather in wetland pockets, while empty hills sit under sunlight that seems to erase sound. When another car finally appears, It can feel like a strange event. The haunting here is not a screaming ghost. It is the silence of a place too large to hurry through. Old lake beds, volcanic scars, expedition routes, and empty ranch country all press against the road. Number 13. Archer Avenue. Archer Avenue in Chicago does not look like one simple ghost road. It is a real city route, tied to neighborhoods, cemeteries, old taverns, and dance halls. Yet one stretch near Justice, Illinois became home to one of America's most famous vanishing hitchhiker stories. Her name is Resurrection Mary, and her legend has been told since the 1930s. The story usually begins with music. A young woman in a pale dress spends the evening dancing at the old O. Henry Ballroom, later known as the Willowbrook Ballroom. After a quarrel or a lonely walk, she is said to leave along Archer Avenue and never make it home. In the legend, she is buried at Resurrection Cemetery, still close to the road that remembers her. For decades, drivers claimed to see her standing near the roadside, dressed for a dance from another time. Some said she asked for a ride and sat quietly in the car. Others said she looked solid until the vehicle neared the cemetery gates. Then the seat turned empty, the air went cold, and the driver was left staring at iron bars and dark grass. A ballroom, a cemetery, a winter road, and a young woman who never finishes her ride. Chicago grew around the story, but Mary stayed young in every telling. When headlights slide past Resurrection Cemetery at night, it is easy to imagine a white dress by the road, waiting for one more song to end. Number 14. Shades of Death Road. Shades of Death Road sounds invented for a ghost story, but it is a real rural road in Warren County, New Jersey. It runs near Jenny Jump State Forest, through quiet bends, heavy trees, and low wet ground. The name has been argued over for generations, and that mystery helped make the road famous long before most visitors ever saw it after dark. Some explanations point to old violence, highway robbers, and dangerous travel through shaded woods. Another story looks to the wetlands. In the 1800s, malaria and other sickness tied to swampy lowlands were a real fear in places like this. The name may have grown from death, shade, illness, and the dark humor of people who had to live with all three. Then there is Ghost Lake, just off the road, where morning mist can rise like pale smoke from the water. Folklore says strange lights, odd sounds, and shapes near the trees have been reported around the lake and nearby woods. In the right weather, the place does not need much help from imagination. Fog hangs low, branches twist together, and the road narrows fast. That is the power of Shades of Death Road. Its history is uncertain, but the feeling is clear. It is not only one ghost or one event. It is a name, a swamp, a forest, and a line of stories passed from driver to driver. Number 15. State Road 14, Turquoise Trail. New Mexico's Turquoise Trail follows State Road 14 between Albuquerque and Santa Fe, but it does not feel like the fast way between two cities. It takes the slower road through old mining country, past hills that held turquoise, coal, gold, silver, lead, and zinc. Villages like Golden, Madrid, and Cerrillos still carry that Western past. Cerrillos is one of the deepest history points along the route. Turquoise from these hills was valued by native peoples long before modern roads, and later mining booms pulled prospectors into the area. By the 1880s, Cerrillos had become a busy mining town, with saloons, hotels, and dirt streets full of noise. Golden also grew with mining hopes before fading. Madrid tells a different chapter. It became a coal town, with miners' cabins, company life, and black tailings on the hillsides. When the mines declined in the mid-1900s, the town nearly emptied. Later, artists and small businesses brought it back in a new form. That mix of abandonment and return gives the road a ghost town feeling without needing a ghost. The Turquoise Trail is haunting because it shows how quickly a boom can become a memory. One bend holds bright art galleries. The next holds old stone, dust, and mine scars. At sunset, the mountains turn purple, and the empty spaces between towns grow quiet. You can almost hear the pickaxes, wagon wheels, and voices of people chasing color in the ground. Number 16. Oasis Street. Oasis Street runs past Riverside Cemetery in Appleton, Wisconsin, a place with roots in the city's earliest years. Appleton's first burial ground began downtown in 1850, but as the town grew, leaders needed a quieter and larger resting place. Riverside Cemetery opened later along the Fox River side of the city, and the road beside it slowly gained a strange reputation. The cemetery holds pioneers, families, veterans, and old Appleton names. Its stones tell the story of a river town built by mills, rail lines, churches, and workers who came north for a new life. But local folklore gave the place another layer. People began speaking of silent mourners near Oasis Street, dressed in dark Victorian clothing, walking slowly between the stones at dusk. Some stories focus on shadowy figures near the fence. Others mention pale shapes drifting near old graves, then fading when headlights turn toward them. One well-known cemetery tale even twisted the memory of a real woman named Kate Blood into something darker, though local history shows she was a real person, not the monster rumor made her become. It is not only about ghosts, but about how a town remembers its dead, then turns memory into legend. At sunset, the cemetery becomes still, the trees darken, and the road seems to soften every sound. For a moment, the old mourners feel close, as if Appleton's first generations are still walking home. Number 17. California State Route 139. California State Route 139 begins near Susanville and runs north through one of the state's loneliest corners. It passes Eagle Lake, ranch country, Modoc National Forest, Tula Lake, and finally, the Oregon line. This is not the California of beaches and traffic. It is high desert, volcanic ground, big forest edges, and long distances where another car can feel like company. The road crosses a region shaped by lava, timber, farming, and hard frontier history. Modoc National Forest began as a forest reserve in 1904, created to protect a rugged landscape of plateaus, lakes, and dry basins. The highway also passes near Tule Lake. a place with a serious World War II history tied to the incarceration of Japanese Americans. That memory gives the quiet land a deeper weight. At night, Route 139 can feel almost empty of the present. Eagle Lake turns black under the sky. The forest pulls close, then opens into pale flats and distant hills. The old lava beds seem frozen in motion, like the land once tried to breathe fire and then stopped. There are no bright city lights to soften the stars, only road paint, headlights, and silence. The haunting here is not a campfire monster. It is the feeling of passing through a place most travelers never see, where natural beauty and difficult history sit side by side. Route 139 reminds you that loneliness can be more than empty space. Sometimes it is a road carrying forests, war memories, old farms. Number 18, Bayou Sale Road. Bayou Sale Road belongs to the deep, wet silence of South Louisiana, where roads often follow water more than land. The bayou country around places like Franklin, Houma, Dulac, and Cocodrie carries a long mix of native, French, Acadian, Creole, and fishing history. Cypress knees rise from black water, and Spanish moss hangs so low it can feel like curtains over the road. In this part of Louisiana, folklore often grows from real hardship. Families worked the swamps, hunted, trapped, fished, and traveled by boat when dry land was scarce. Storms could change a life in one night, and a wrong turn near the marsh could leave a person alone with insects, fog, and dark water on both sides. Stories of ghost lights and lanterns fit naturally in such a place. One gentle legend speaks of a mother's spirit walking near the bayou at dusk, carrying a small lantern while searching for a child she never found. Drivers say the light moves between trees or shines low along the water, then disappears before anyone can reach it. Others hear soft crying carried by frogs, wind, and the slow movement of the swamp. Whether the story is old truth or bayou imagination, Bayou Sale Road feels made for whispered endings. It is lonely because the water is always close, and haunted because the land seems to remember loss without speaking loudly. When the lantern glow appears in the moss, it feels less like a scare and more like a sorrow, still trying to find its way home. Number 19, Mona Lisa Drive. Mona Lisa Drive hides inside New Orleans City Park, far from the busy streets people usually picture first. The park itself is old, wide, and dreamlike, filled with lagoons, bridges, moss-draped live oaks, and paths that turn quiet after sunset. Near the old dueling oaks, where Creole gentlemen once settled insults, local legend places one of the city's softer ghost stories. The story changes depending on who tells it, but the heart stays the same. Mona was a young woman, connected to love, family pressure, and a sad end near the park's water. Some versions speak of a forbidden romance, others of a sailor who never returned. Over time, her name became tied to the shaded road and the dark water under the oak branches. Drivers and walkers say Mona does not appear like a frightening spirit. She is usually a pale figure moving gently through the trees, or a soft glow passing near the lagoon. Some hear whispers in the wind, not angry, but lonely. In a city famous for loud parades and brass bands, Mona Lisa Drive feels different, almost private, as if grief chose a quiet corner. It turns City Park into something more than beautiful scenery. The oaks become witnesses, the water becomes a mirror, and the night seems to hold one unfinished love story. Maybe Mona is only mist, moonlight, and New Orleans imagination. But under those ancient branches, even imagination can feel alive. Number 20, Boy Scout Lane. Boy Scout Lane sits outside Stevens Point, Wisconsin, as a narrow dead-end road surrounded by thick woods. Its name alone makes people lean closer when the story begins. For years, an urban legend claimed that a troop of scouts met a terrible fate there in the 1950s or 1960s. The details change from fire to disappearance to betrayal, depending on who is telling it. The important truth is that records do not support that tragedy. Local researchers have found no proof of a fatal scout camp disaster on the road. The name appears to come from land once owned by the Boy Scouts of America, where a camp was planned but never built. That real explanation is simple, but simple facts rarely stop a lonely road from becoming folklore. Visitors still report strange little moments. Some say they hear children laughing deep in the trees when the air is still. Others speak of small lights bobbing beyond the brush, like lanterns moving between trunks. Because the road has no outlet, every driver must turn around and face the same dark woods again, which makes even harmless sounds feel closer. Boy Scout Lane is haunting because it shows how a story can grow around an empty place. No proven disaster waits at the end, yet the forest, the name, and the dead-end silence keep pulling people in. Maybe the lights are fireflies or flashlights, and maybe the laughter is only wind through leaves. Still, when the car turns back, the road feels less empty than before. Number 21, Dudley Road. Dudley Road sits between Billerica and Burlington, Massachusetts, with old stone walls, thick woods, and a quiet New England feeling that seems to belong to another century. The road is not famous for one proven event. It is famous because local stories kept gathering there, especially near the old religious property and the dark fields around it. The best-known legend speaks of ghostly nuns walking the roadside at night. Some versions try to tie the tale to witchcraft and the Salem era, but the dates do not fit cleanly, and the details change from town to town. That is why the story works better as folklore than as a court record. It shows how old fear can attach itself to a lonely road. Drivers say the figures appear in pale habits or dark robes, moving silently between trees before vanishing near the stone walls. Others describe a sudden coldness or the feeling that someone is keeping pace just beyond the shoulder. In daylight, the same road can look peaceful, with colonial homes and deep green woods. After sunset, every bend feels less certain. The land remembers old farms, old faith, and old Massachusetts silence, while the legend adds footsteps where no one is walking. Maybe the nuns are only shadows. Maybe the stories grew from teenage dares. Still, when headlights sweep across those stones, the road feels like it has not finished speaking. Number 22, Selma Highway. Selma Highway near Bear Creek Swamp carries drivers through a low, wet part of Autauga County, Alabama, where trees crowd the road and mist can rise without warning. The swamp itself is real, and so is the strange feeling of driving near dark water at night. In places like this, headlights catch fog, insects, and wet branches until the whole roadside seems to move. Local folklore tells of ghost lights, phantom cars, and a sad mother searching for a lost child. Older swamp traditions also speak of will-o'-the-wisps, small lights that hover over marshy ground. Science gives calm answers for many of them: gas, reflections, humidity, and distance. But when a pale glow appears over black water, calm answers do not always feel close. Bear Creek Swamp became even stranger in 2014 when deputies found 21 dolls placed on bamboo stakes in the mud. Officials believed it may have been a prank, but the image traveled far beyond Prattville and gave the old stories new life. A haunted road does not need much help when something real and odd appears in the swamp beside it. Its legend is built from water, weather, local memory, and one modern mystery that looked like it belonged in a folktale. Maybe the lights are natural, maybe the sounds are frogs and wind, but when the fog covers the road and the swamp disappears into darkness, Bear Creek feels like it is hiding a story just out of sight. Number 23. Bray Road. Bray Road outside Elkhorn, Wisconsin looks like a quiet country lane with fields, barns, tree lines, and long stretches where headlights reach farther than porch lights. Yet in the late 1980s and early 1990s, this ordinary road became famous across the state. People began reporting a large, wolf-like figure near the fields, sometimes walking on two legs. The story gained public attention in 1991 when local reports described witnesses who said they had seen something powerful, hairy, and strangely human in shape. Some older versions reach back to 1936, with a reported creature near a burial mound in southern Wisconsin. Whether those early tales connect or not, Bray Road became the name people remembered. Witnesses described glowing eyes, a heavy body, and a canine face watching from ditches or cornfields. Some said it crouched near roadkill. Others said it rose up as their car passed. Wildlife experts have offered simpler ideas: bears, coyotes, dogs, hoaxes, or fear changing what people saw. But the reports kept the legend alive because they came from ordinary drivers, not actors on a stage. The Beast of Bray Road is haunting because it turns farm country into a place of doubt. One minute the road is fences and fields. The next, every dark shape by the ditch seems too tall. Number 24. Jeremy Swamp Road. Jeremy Swamp Road in Southbury, Connecticut belongs to a larger family of New England road legends. The lane runs through heavy woods and quiet rural land, the kind of place where a car feels very alone after dark. It is often linked to Connecticut's melon heads, strange woodland figures said to watch travelers from behind trees and stone walls. The Melonhead legend appears in several Connecticut towns, especially across Fairfield and New Haven counties. The stories change, but they usually describe small, hidden people with large heads living far from town. Some versions blame an old asylum or abandoned institution. Others reach back to colonial families forced into the woods. None of these origins has solid proof, but the tales spread widely. On Jeremy Swamp Road, drivers tell of engines sputtering, headlights flickering, and shapes moving too quickly between the trunks. Sometimes the story says the road itself does not want visitors. A stalled car becomes a warning. A branch snapping in the dark becomes a footstep. The woods do not have to show much. Imagination fills in the rest. What makes Jeremy Swamp Road last is how simple the fear is. It is not a castle, a mansion, or a famous battlefield. It is only a narrow road, a dark forest, and the thought that something small and clever might be watching. Maybe every story is just rumor passed from one group of teenagers to another. But when the engine hesitates there, even a skeptic listens. Number 25. Route 66. Route 66 at Villa Ridge, Missouri, carries the memory of America's great roadside age. In 1927, the Diamonds restaurant opened near the meeting of US 50, US 66, and Missouri 100. It became a busy stop for travelers, buses, truckers, and families moving across the country. The road outside was not just pavement, it was a promise. After the original restaurant burned in 1948, a sleek new building opened in 1949, large enough to serve thousands in a day. Chrome, tile, bakery smells, bus traffic, and highway chatter filled the place. Then, Interstate 44 changed everything. When the new road bypassed the old traffic in the late 1960s, businesses that once seemed permanent began to fade. In 1971, the Tri-County Truck Stop moved into the old Diamonds building and kept it alive for another generation. Truckers stopped for meals, coffee, fuel, and stories before heading back into Missouri night. It finally closed in 2006, and the building became one more silent landmark along Old Route 66. In 2025, storm damage added another scar to its long decline. The haunting here is not only whispers in an empty room, it is the ghost of a highway culture that once felt endless. When people stand near the old truck stop, they imagine engines idling, dishes clattering, and neon glowing against the dark. Route 66 did not vanish, but parts of it went quiet. Number 26. White Lady Lane. White Lady Lane sits near Walhalla, in the far northeastern corner of North Dakota, where fields, woods, and cold open sky meet near the Pembina Gorge. The road feels quiet even in daylight. Local legend gives the lane its name, and the oldest versions do not agree on every detail. But they all return to one image: a young woman in white, alone beside the road. One Walhalla telling names her Anna Story, a young woman whose life ended in heartbreak after strict family pressure and a forced marriage. Other versions change the cause, placing her in a winter storm or tying her sorrow to a lost love. The facts are difficult to prove, but the legend stayed because the land itself feels built for memory. Drivers say she appears on misty nights, not rushing, not screaming, just walking along the lane in a pale dress. Headlights touch her for a second, and then the figure fades into fog or darkness. Sometimes people say they feel a chill in the car before they see anything at all. The road becomes still, as if the planes have stopped breathing. White Lady Lane is haunting because it turns wide North Dakota loneliness into one quiet human shape. Whether Anna was real exactly as told, or whether the story grew from grief and winter fear, the feeling remains. On that empty road, the white figure is less like a monster and more like a memory that never found shelter. Number 27. State Highway 200. State Highway 200 crosses North Dakota from the Montana line toward the Minnesota border, cutting through prairie, small towns, river country, and open farmland. At roughly 416 miles, it is the longest state highway in North Dakota. It does not shout for attention. It stretches across the state like a quiet thread. The road passes near places that hold many layers of northern history. There are museums, old depots, state parks, wildlife areas, Cold War sites, and stretches of land shaped by farming, railroads, and the Missouri River. In western North Dakota, the country grows rougher near badlands and ranchland. Farther east, the land flattens into long fields and small communities. At dusk, Highway 200 can feel almost endless. Wheat bends in the wind. Grain elevators rise like lonely towers. A farmhouse light may be miles away, and the sky seems larger than any town beneath it. This is not a road of one famous ghost. Its mystery comes from space, distance, and the feeling that a person could drive for hours through quiet lives and quiet graves. That is what makes Highway 200 feel haunted in a prairie way. It carries the story of North Dakota without making noise. Homesteaders, rail workers, farmers, soldiers, and families who stayed through hard winters. When night settles over the fields, the road feels less empty than it first appears. It feels full of people who passed through and left only the wind. Number 28. Haunted Avon Bridge. The haunted Avon Bridge rises over County Road 625 East in Avon, Indiana. A tall concrete railroad bridge built in 1906 for the Big Four Railroad. Its arches still carry trains above the road, and the bridge became so connected to local identity that it appears in Avon's town seal. The main story says a railroad worker slipped during construction and fell into wet cement, becoming trapped inside the bridge. Another version speaks of a young mother who fell while trying to reach help for her child. A third tells of workers falling into White Lick Creek. Local historians cannot prove these tales, but the bridge kept all of them like echoes under its arches. People who pass beneath it say they sometimes hear a low moan when a train rolls overhead. The sound may be steel, wheels, and concrete carrying noise in a strange way. Still, the custom in Avon is simple and almost friendly. Drivers honk their horns as they go under the bridge, as if greeting whatever might be listening in the dark. Number 29. Route 44. Route 44 in Rehoboth, Massachusetts, runs through a wooded part of Bristol County and sits inside the wider mystery country often called the Bridgewater Triangle. This stretch looks ordinary at first. Trees, dark shoulders, passing headlights, and old New England roads leading toward older towns. But since at least the late 20th century, one figure has made drivers uneasy. He is known as the red-headed hitchhiker. Witnesses describe a red-haired man on the roadside, sometimes wearing a flannel shirt, sometimes looking rough, older, or strangely cheerful. The story says he appears after dark with his thumb out, as if he only needs a short ride. Some drivers stop, others keep going and watch him vanish in the mirror. In the classic version, he climbs into the back seat and begins to talk. His voice may sound normal at first, then strange. He might laugh, stare too long, or grow quiet as the car moves deeper along the road. Then, without a door opening, he is gone. No name, no explanation, only an empty seat and the feeling that the driver was never alone. Route 44 is haunting because no one owns the final story. Some people think the hitchhiker may be tied to a crash. Number 30, U.S. Route 129, Tail of the Dragon. U.S. Route 129, called the Tail of the Dragon, runs through the mountains at the North Carolina and Tennessee line. The famous stretch is only 11 miles long, but it holds 318 curves and no intersecting roads. It winds where the Great Smoky Mountains meet the Cherokee National Forest, turning every mile into a test of patience and control. During the day, riders and sports car drivers come from all over the country to challenge its bends. The road has names for curves, pull-offs for stories, and a reputation built by skill, beauty, and danger. But long before it became famous online, this mountain country was tied to Cherokee homelands, Appalachian travel, timber routes, and isolated communities tucked into deep valleys. At night, the dragon changes. The crowds disappear, the forest presses close, and the road becomes a black ribbon between steep slopes. There are no stores or streetlights in the most famous section, only trees, cliffs, and curves that keep coming. A driver sees one bend, then another, until the headlights seem trapped inside the mountain. Every turn reminds you that beauty can be dangerous when pride takes the wheel. The tail of the dragon feels alive because it never lets a traveler relax.
If you enjoy this video, please click the like button.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
See you in the next one.